Hopkins, and this is going to be a brief bio of some of the work that I've had and some of the experience that I've had that has influenced my process. First of all, I started off in high school. I was given a monologue, "But soft what light through yonder window breaks" by Romeo, and that's where I first got the Shakespeare bug. After that, I moved on to university, where I worked with Donnalee Blythe, who was an English actress, who basically would always tell me how she could trace her acting lineage all the way back to the company of Shakespeare. I found that quite inspiring, and whenever she would tell me something or I'd quote her, she would always say to me, "That's not me. That was passed down to me from her mentors, who then had it passed down from other mentors," and so on and so forth. The next person I worked with was a professor named Neil Freeman. He was at York University and then later on at a university in BC. And he did a lot of work with the Folio, Shakespeare's original Folio, the first Folio. And he taught actors how to read the first Folio and use it as a means of inspiration to sort of maybe get an idea of how one might speak or say the lines with different emphasis, and then use that as a launching pad for their own performances. After that, I worked with Repercussion Theatre in Montreal, Shakespeare-in-the-Park, where I played Romeo in Romeo and Juliet, and Cloten in Cymbeline. After that, I went on to have a fairly extensive career in film and television, but before I launched into my career in film and television, I worked at the Atlantic Theatre Festival, where I worked with Michael Langham. Michael Langham was part of the original company that founded the Stratford Festival in Canada. He then was the artistic director of the Stratford Festival for 8 to 10 years, between 1954 and 1968, I believe. And then he was the artistic director of the Guthrie Theatre in Minneapolis. After that, he became the head of the theatre department at the Juilliard School of Performing Arts. And he has definitely been an inspiration, a fascinating story behind him. Following that, I went on and did a lot of film and television, and my experience doing Shakespeare, I believe it gave me a certain credibility when it came to film and television. Hopefully after you do this, you'll get that same sort of sense of credibility. Following 5 or 6 years working and doing a lot of different projects in film and television, I went back to my first love. And after that, I went back to the Stratford Festival. I came back to Canada after spending a few years back and forth to Los Angeles. I came back to Canada and I went to the Stratford Festival, where I performed for 2 seasons. And this also included participating in the Birmingham Conservatory of Classical Theatre training. A lot of the process that I'll be going through with you here is deeply influenced by that, but also by my experience working with Michael Langham and Donnalee Blythe and Neil Freeman and so on. Directly following the Stratford Festival of Canada, my few years there, I went off to work with a company called Shakespeare and the Queen's Men. The Queen's Men was a troupe of actors that existed and toured through England before Shakespeare really hit his stride, and it is presumed that Shakespeare might have been a part of this troupe. And this was a research project that explored the process of producing and acting theatre in Shakespeare's time. Then for the next 8 years, I was the artistic director of Montreal's Shakespeare-in-the-Park company, Repercussion Theatre. For 8 years, we produced productions that toured to over 10,000 people every summer throughout Montreal and in community parks. Part of our mandate was to hire young actors fresh out of school and to coach them on acting Shakespeare. So this is where a lot of my experience working with younger actors comes from. Lastly, for all of this, I was nominated and a finalist for the Christopher Plummer Award of Excellence in Classical Theatre. This nomination came directly from Christopher Plummer himself. I felt very privileged to be honored in that way. And as you will see in the Shakespeare Roadmap process, I use all of this experience to sort of distill down the most efficient way for you to look at Shakespeare, to analyze it, to embody it, to make it your own, and create the best performance possible with the inspiration of Shakespeare under your belt.